Until recently, Tim Hawk was among America's top spy masters. The four-star general spent 33 years in Air Force intelligence and rose to lead America's largest and most advanced intelligence agency. Hawk was also in charge of defending America from computer threats. In his first television interview since retirement, General Hawk is here to warn that China has hacked into U.S. computer networks to an astonishing degree, and he believes he knows why. The surprise, Tim Hawk told us, is that China is targeting not just the U.S. military and industry, but also Americans in their homes.
I think initially we were surprised that China would target every American with these capabilities. That goes against every norm of international law. That certainly goes against how the United States military would approach targeting in a crisis or a conflict. That the fact that they would go after basic services as part of their effort that they have identified as unrestricted warfare is unconscionable.
And what did they target?
They targeted water, they targeted electrical power, infrastructure, transportation are examples of the types of things that were targeted. And in many cases, they're vulnerable.
Multiple intrusions at utilities were discovered in 2023, and China had been on some of their computer networks at least 5 years. You're saying that the Chinese today are in American power plants, water treatment plants, other parts of the electrical grid, maybe even hospitals, telecommunications, all of that?
So there is a daily contest that is going on to be able to deny China those accesses, but they are certainly attempting every single day to be able to target telecommunications, to be able to target critical infrastructure, both in the United States and in other countries, and they are doing that to try to ensure that they have an advantage in a crisis or a conflict.
Is China preparing for war?
There was no other reason to target those systems. There was no advantage to be gained economically. There was no foreign intelligence collection value. The only value would be for use in a crisis or a conflict.
In 2024, Tim Hawk rose to lead both the National Security Agency, America's largest spy agency, plus U.S. Cyber Command, the military defense in cyberspace. Hawk took over just as the scope of China's hacking of utilities was becoming clear in a place no one would have imagined. Is Littleton a major supplier of some kind to the federal government?
We are not.
Major supplier to a military base?
No.
Nick Lawler is general manager of the Littleton, Massachusetts electric and water utility. His town has 10,000 residents. Can you think of any reason that China would target your little community?
That's the exact question I had for the FBI when they visited me on that first day, and I still can't answer that question. No, I can't think of one reason.
The FBI visited in November 2023 to tell Lawler that China had access to his utility's computer network. He says the feds told him he was one of 200. How much of all of this is controlled remotely by computer?
All of it.
In his water treatment plant, Lawler showed us tanks of dangerous chemicals that are precisely controlled to deliver clean water. If you had control of these tanks, you've got control of Littleton, Massachusetts. You can poison the water.
You can poison the water.
But China was caught before it had operational control. With Lawler's permission, the feds watched what China was doing, and what they learned was part of an awakening for American security.
If you are willing to go after a small water provider in Littleton, Massachusetts, what other target is off the list? So from that perspective, this is a national threat. It's one that needs to be addressed, but it's also one that every American should understand. Because if they're willing to go after that small provider that doesn't have a national security connection, that means every target is on the list.
So help me understand. Why Littleton?
If we are involved in something in the Indo-Pacific that is becoming a challenge between the United States and China. The more that China could get us to focus at home means now our resources are focused in the homeland. That would distract us, distract resources, make it more difficult for us to mobilize in a crisis.
Littleton may not be a very large place, but if the Chinese took its water offline, the entire country would be focused on it.
And if there were 3 to 4 other examples simultaneously, plus an information campaign, it could seem much larger than it is, or it could be done in critical places that would have a greater effect.
Other critical places believed to have been targeted by China over years include New York City's Metropolitan Transportation Authority, 13 gas pipeline operators, the Port of Houston, and major phone companies.
But here's the bottom line on this. They have gotten to be very, very good at cyber operations.
Mike Rounds thinks he knows why China is doing this. The Republican senator of South Dakota is chair of the Armed Services Cybersecurity Subcommittee. He believes China intends to deter the U.S. from standing up in a fight by hacking our most sensitive industries.
But all it takes is a blip on the financial markets to delay certain trades by just milliseconds to put the market into an entirely different attitude about the security and the soundness of being able to make those transactions happen.
You're talking about causing chaos on Wall Street.
Threatening to be able to cause chaos on Wall Street would be something that they would love to do.
And turning the lights on and off.
Most certainly. Or to start out with, whether or not you can get an airline reservation. And so those are areas that they would love to do just so that when the time comes, in my opinion, they can look at it and simply say, we know where you're at, don't mess with us. We're capable of causing real problems for you long term.
China is causing those problems by exploiting vulnerabilities in network equipment. In Littleton, Massachusetts, China found a weakness in a network firewall. That's not unusual when software vulnerabilities go unpatched or when out-of-date equipment is no longer supported with security updates. Once inside, China did not install malware, which could be a red flag. Instead, it stole login credentials and masqueraded as a legitimate employee.
They are just gaining access to that system and then attempting to lay dormant. They're not spending more time collecting intelligence or taking other activities.
It's there if they need it later.
Exactly.
Do we even know how extensively the Chinese are into our systems?
I don't think we have a perfect knowledge of that.
How many Chinese attacks are there on U.S. systems in a day?
I would expect that automated activity are happening at scans at the millions of devices throughout every single day.
China denies the hacking. The White House told us it is working to assess exposure and mitigate the damage. In Littleton, the damage forced Nick Lawler to completely rebuild his network at a cost of more than $50,000.
It is much more consuming to try to get somebody out of a network than to deny them access, which is why it's so critically important that we get the basics right in our critical infrastructure and in these substantive networks so that we aren't expending more resource to try to root them out.
Tell me we're good at this.
We are definitely good at this.
Really?
But the scale is a challenge.
Very few understood the scale or the challenge as well as General Hawk. In the first Trump administration, he was promoted to 2-star general, then 3-star. But later, with a 4th star, he led the National Security Agency for only a little over a year.
I got a phone call from a senior official in the Department of Defense that told me that the president had made a decision to remove me.
He was fired in April after a far-right activist named Laura Loomer met with the president. Online, she explained that Hawk was disloyal and had been referred for firing. The evidence she pointed to publicly was Hawk's appointment by President Biden. She called Hawk's firing a blessing for the American people. That has got to be galling after your career.
I know in my heart that every day I wanted to achieve the things for our nation that would make us more secure and make every American safe. And that continued to my last day of service. So from that perspective, it certainly was impactful to me and my family. But at the end of the day, it's about our nation and it's about our nation's security.
You're sitting there with 4 stars on your shoulder. You have spent your entire life in the Air Force, and you've been accused of being disloyal. Your reaction is what?
That every day I woke up committed to our national security and to meeting the expectations of the president.
Not disloyal.
Absolutely not.
The White House did not answer our questions about Hawk's firing from the National Security Agency. Later, Hawk retired from the Air Force.
We do not have enough of these types of leaders, and a loss of any one of them without strong justification is disappointing.
A new acting head of the National Security Agency was appointed, but the week after the firing, Republican Mike Rounds, chair of the Senate's Cybersecurity Subcommittee, saw Hawk's sudden termination this way.
The departure of General Hawk is a loss for our nation, but will be a tremendous gain for any private or public entity where he decides to lend his expertise and leadership. I wish him Godspeed. That said, as our adversaries watch this hearing, it will be clear that no matter the scenario, our cyber mission forces are ready.
The National Security Agency and U.S. Cyber Command are consequential organizations. The second I was no longer the leader, focus shifts to them. They have consequential missions to do. And for my family, it shifts to how do we serve in different ways.
Today, Tim Hawk serves by teaching at Yale and consulting private industry, but sidelined in government as China expands its aggressive hacking, spying, and theft of intellectual property. There have been resignations and firings of other people focused on America's cyber defense. What does that mean for our national security?
Our overall capacity is getting smaller while we know China's continues to grow. There is still immense capability in the U.S. government. And now it will be up to the administration to be able to use that and build partnerships with industry to be able to ensure that we're countering these threats.
If the United States does not dominate in this space, what is at stake?
First, I'm always confident in our nation. But if we don't dominate in this space, China gains advantage with the ability to continue to steal intellectual property, which impacts our economy. They could gain increased intelligence collection, which would help them every day and also in a crisis and conflict. And they could pre-position in critical networks, both in the United States and with allies and partners, that could give them advantage in a crisis. We can't let that happen.
According to the latest assessment from America's intelligence agencies, China remains the most active and persistent cyber threat to the U.S. Its hackers have infiltrated the U.S. government, the private sector, and critical infrastructure like water systems and power grids. Hacking, however, has not replaced Beijing's pursuit of old-fashioned human intelligence. As we first reported in May, China's Communist Party remains intent on leveraging a worldwide network of covert agents to monitor and influence events outside its own borders and to surveil and intimidate Chinese dissidents right here in America. Tonight, you'll hear about why China's spies are on the rise and what happens when one gets caught.
This is, in scale and in scope and in brazenness, the biggest espionage operation against the U.S. in its history.
Jim Lewis is a former U.S. diplomat whose direct experience with China's intelligence agencies spans more than 30 years. He says since President Xi Jinping came to power in 2012, China's spies no longer seem to fear the U.S. Why do China's espionage efforts appear to be growing so big, so fast under Xi Jinping?
Xi Jinping thinks it's China's time to move to the center of the world stage. Xi Jinping looks at the West and at the U.S. and says, these people are feeble-minded, and I'm going to be able to beat them.
It may not be a household name in the U.S., But according to Lewis, China's Ministry of State Security, or MSS, is now the largest and most active spy agency in the world. In a propaganda video the spy agency posted last year on China's largest social network, a voiceover boasts that the MSS senses things before they happen and fights against evil. The slick production is a public message to both foreign adversaries and China's own citizens about the ministry's growing power.
It's sort of the equivalent of the CIA, but it has much greater powers. One estimate says the MSS might have 600,000 employees, and they are committed to going after the United States. We are target number 2 for them.
Who's target number 1?
Target number 1 is China's own people. When Xi Jinping wakes up screaming in the middle of the night, he's really worried that the Chinese Communist Party was on the path that the Soviet Communist Party was on.
Lewis says to maintain absolute power at home, President Xi looks abroad.
Xi Jinping probably remembers that a lot of revolutions start outside the home country, and he doesn't want that to happen to China. So there's a huge effort to pay attention to the expatriate population.
One way Beijing paid attention, according to the FBI, was to secretly open an overseas Chinese police station right in the middle of New York City. It was discovered in 2022, hidden among businesses in a commercial building in Manhattan's Chinatown. While Chinese expats could renew government documents there like driver's licenses, federal prosecutors said the main purpose of the outpost was to target and harass Chinese dissidents.
They've done it in the Netherlands, they've done it in Canada, but the idea that you'd open a police station in another country, that's a signal disrespect of the sovereignty of that nation.
After the station was shut down, 2 Chinese Americans who allegedly opened it were charged with conspiracy to act as unregistered foreign agents of China. In total, over the last 5 years, the Department of Justice has indicted more than 140 people for felonies related to harassment, hacking, and spying for China within the U.S. And one of the accused worked for the governor of New York. Federal prosecutors allege a former top aide to Kathy Hochul named Linda Sun accepted millions of dollars to influence who the governor met with and what she said about China. Sun and her husband, who have pled not guilty, owned a multi-million-dollar home on Long Island and a condo in Hawaii.
Having a Ferrari and 2 multi-million-dollar houses is a bad idea. But
For a government employee.
everyone leaves a record. Some records are more flamboyant than others.
Flamboyant is not a word that comes to mind when you meet Xujun Wang. The 76-year-old retired historian came to the U.S. from China in 1994 as a visiting scholar at Columbia University. In New York, home to more exiled Chinese activists than any other city in the world, Wang helped found a group that met regularly and was dedicated to democracy in China.
In the 2010s, the overseas democracy movement was gaining momentum, and I was eager to be a part of it and promote democracy.
What was your specific role in the pro-democracy community in Flushing, Queens?
I was assigned the role of Vice President, Secretary General for Publicity and Events, all kinds of events.
While Xujun Wang became a trusted member of the Chinese dissident community here in New York, he kept another role secret. For almost 20 years, he was spying for China's Ministry of State Security. Did you take notes about who attended these meetings and what they said?
Yes.
When did you start sharing that information with China's largest intelligence group?
That is a very big misunderstanding.
In 2022, Xujun Wang was indicted by the U.S. Department of Justice for sharing dissidents' names, contact information, and private conversations at the direction of the MSS for 17 years. When we spoke with him in February through an interpreter, he was at times combative and disputed basic facts of his case. So we eventually asked Mr. Wang point blank Were you spying for the Chinese government?
没有。
No. Throughout the entire trial, they were very careful. They never used the word spy. Just look at the record, and you'll see that.
We did. And while lying to 60 Minutes may not be a crime, lying to the FBI is. Mr. Wong repeatedly told federal agents he had no contact with the Ministry of State Security. But according to federal prosecutors, he met with these MSS officers in China, and they offered him plane tickets and helped his family with a business dispute. In 2021, someone claiming to be from the MSS showed up at Mr. Wong's door to help delete communications from his computer that might incriminate him. Video from the encounter showed he welcomed the man's help. Unfortunately for Mr. Wong, the Chinese operative was actually an undercover FBI agent. Mr. Wong had pled not guilty. Last August, he was convicted of making false statements, illegally possessing democracy activists' identification, and acting as an unregistered foreign agent of China.
Our position has always been that he never had the intent to be an agent of the Chinese government.
Mr. Wong's lawyers, Zachary Margulis-Onama and Kevin Tung, admit their client was in touch with Chinese intelligence, but they argue he didn't break the law and claim FBI agents went after him once they were unable to recruit him for the U.S.
They were hoping he would roll over and identify handlers higher up the food chain. No, he did not do so. And they felt a little vindictive and angry and frustrated about their inability to stop higher up actual espionage, and they turned him into this fall guy.
But when you look at the reality, he didn't have any access to top secret information. All he passed over is the attendance sheet of the democracy movement. Those information are available in public. So
People's names that attend a private event are not public. They're only made public.
In this case,
Can we home in on that?
Yeah.
So there's no evidence of any harm to the United States interests or to democracy movement interests from anything that he did.
Anna Young Chung disagrees. She testified against Mr. Wong in court. The pro-democracy activist's name and contact information, along with 63 others, was found in Mr. Wong's luggage when he returned to New York from a trip to China in 2019. Did you ever imagine that Mr. Wong was one of the people who was reporting what you were doing and others back to China?
Not at all.
Did you lose sleep over it?
Yeah, and I also make sure my door chain was on all the time at night, because you never know.
Born in Hong Kong, Ms. Young Chung is now a U.S. citizen and professor of biology. She organizes demonstrations for the Hong Kong democracy movement in the U.S., where she's become increasingly wary of who might be watching.
I believe they're collecting information.
What kind of information?
Like what are we doing, what we are saying in the protests, and how many people are showing up there, things like that.
And collecting that information for whom?
For Beijing.
Why do you think China goes to such lengths to spy on pro-democracy activists here in the U.S.?
This is their tactics, right? They try to silence you, harass you, or intimidate you so that you stop what you're doing.
They want to cripple me and cripple my ability to advocate for Hong Kong.
Anna Kwok now runs the pro-democracy organization that Anna Young Chung co-founded. Because of her outspoken activism, the Hong Kong government has placed a $130,000 bounty on her head.
So every single day I wake up, I open my social media, and then I would see people talking about how if I keep talking here in the United States, they will come kidnap me and take my body to the Chinese consulate so that they can send me back to China.
How are you viewed by the Chinese government?
If I do go back to Hong Kong, it's gonna be life imprisonment. So basically, they see me as a traitor, as someone who betrays the Chinese government and the Hong Kong government.
And what's the crime you've committed?
They think that fighting for democracy, wanting a say in our own future is a crime.
The United States is known as the land of the free.
Do you feel free here?
Honestly, with China's long-arm repression, it's difficult to feel free anywhere in the world. The thing about the Chinese government is that you can leave the country, you can leave the territory, but you can never actually leave their governance.
After we met her, Anna Kwok's father and brother were arrested in Hong Kong. She is currently seeking political asylum in the U.S. In March, the Trump administration announced sanctions against officials in Hong Kong who have targeted her and 18 other prominent activists living abroad. As for Xu Jun Wang, on April 14th, a federal judge sentenced him to 3 years supervised release. He spared Mr. Wang prison time because of health problems, including cognitive decline. But the judge reiterated he had committed serious crimes against the U.S.
He was an agent. He worked with the Chinese government to identify targets for them to surveil and compromise.
According to China analyst Jim Lewis, there's still no substitute for on-the-ground human intelligence, even if Mr. Wang was an expendable asset for China's top spy agency.
Not exactly James Bond.
Definitely not James Bond. Definitely not. That's the scary part, though, is that the Chinese are very good. And so he was not number one on the list of assets to protect. That means there are other assets who are being protected.
Kevin Mallory was a down-on-his-luck former clandestine case officer for the CIA when he was approached by a man the Department of Justice believes was a Chinese spy. Officials say Mallory was a prime target for recruitment. He was out of work, 3 months behind on his mortgage, and thousands of dollars in debt. But as the Chinese would discover, Kevin Mallory wasn't exactly James Bond. The Department of Justice agreed to show us how they caught Mr. Mallory and why they believe his recruitment by China is part of a massive clandestine campaign to steal not just national security secrets from the U.S. government, but industrial and technological secrets from American companies. This is what espionage looks like. The man standing on the right in the yellow shirt is Kevin Mallory, who once held a top-secret security clearance while working for the CIA and the Defense Intelligence Agency. Footage from a surveillance camera at a Virginia FedEx store in April last year caught him as he prepared to hand a clerk stacks of classified documents to be scanned onto an SD card, the kind that can be inserted into a mobile phone.
So this is the rare moment, right, in an investigation and in an espionage case where we actually have video footage of the individual preparing the classified material for transmission to the Foreign Intelligence Service.
We watched the tape with Ryan Gaynor, the FBI's supervisory special agent who investigated Mallory, and Jennifer Jelly, who prosecuted the case against him for the National Security Division of the Department of Justice. They say Kevin Mallory sent national security secrets to a Chinese spy on a covert communication device.
So here you see him talking with the store clerk about the scanning job. And throughout this video, you see little pops of yellow, little yellow pieces of paper that flash by when he's showing the document. That was important for us because the document that he successfully passed consisted of a typed up white piece of paper. That was the classified information, followed by 2 yellow sheets of paper with his handwriting on them. And here you can see.
So those are the yellow sheets.
You can see the yellow sheets going through that scanning process.
Prosecutors say some of the information Mallory sent could have revealed the identity of a couple who had secretly spied on China for the U.S. It was a very personal betrayal. Mallory had supervised the couple years before.
He was betraying people. This is people's lives at stake.
Correct. These were documents that specifically talked about human beings whose lives could be in danger.
If they had traveled to China, they could have been arrested.
At the time he gave the information to the Chinese intelligence officer, he knew they were planning on traveling to China.
John Demers is the top official in charge of the Department of Justice's National Security Division, which helps guard the U.S. against terrorism, cyber attacks, and espionage. He's responsible for coordinating activities across law enforcement and U.S. intelligence agencies. He says Kevin Mallory's recruitment is just one of many efforts by the Chinese Ministry of State Security, or MSS, to spy on the United States.
What is MSS?
So MSS is the principal intelligence agency of the Chinese government. And in rough terms, it is like the CIA and FBI put together. Their capabilities are world-class. They have cyber capabilities, they have expertise in turning people into cooperators, and they have all of the tools and expertise of a very capable intelligence organization.
John Demers says Kevin Mallory hadn't worked for any U.S. intelligence agency in 5 years, but he was still of interest to China. He spoke Mandarin, was desperate for money, and had classified information he might be willing to sell.
You're looking for people who will be willing to work with you for one reason or another. You start very slowly. You start to see what information they're willing to share with you, originally innocuous information, then something maybe slightly more sensitive, and so forth. And that relationship develops over time. It's a patient process.
It's a grooming of an intelligence asset.
It's a grooming, and it's a constant testing to see what the person is willing to do.
The Chinese didn't reach out to Kevin Mallory in a dark alley like in a movie. They made contact with him like any job recruiter would. They sent him a message on the career networking site LinkedIn.
What could the Chinese tell from reading his LinkedIn page?
When you look at this LinkedIn page, it's very clear immediately that he worked in national security, that he had the type of background that the Chinese intelligence services are most interested in.
He's good at national security, military, international relations, counterterrorism, security clearance, dispute resolution. This is a signpost to I was a former intelligence official.
And it led to what you would expect.
Mallory ended up in contact with this man, who called himself Michael Yang and claimed to be an employee at a Chinese think tank.
So he's a Chinese intelligence officer?
We believe him to be a Chinese intelligence officer, and more importantly, Mr. Mallory, when meeting with him, believed him to be an intelligence officer.
Over the next several weeks, Michael Yang paid Mallory $25,000 to come to Shanghai twice, and Mallory reached out to former colleagues at the CIA, asking to be put in touch with people who had current intelligence on China. Prosecutors say his former colleagues grew suspicious and reported him to CIA security, putting him on the radar of law enforcement. When Mallory returned from his second trip to China, he was stopped by customs at Chicago's O'Hare Airport. He had lied on this form about how much money he was carrying, more than $16,000 in cash, and agents discovered this box with a phone in it. Mallory claimed it was a gift for his wife, but it was actually a covert communication device that had been given to him by Chinese intelligence.
This looks just like a regular phone. What makes it a covert communication device?
So it's not so much the hardware. The phone itself had a unique piece of software installed on it designed to allow secure communication, both in text and also the secure transmission of documents later.
You might think a former CIA officer would be cautious about the texts he sends to a Chinese spy, but Kevin Mallory was remarkably direct, complaining about the money he was paid and the risk he was taking. Your object is to gain information, he told Michael Yang, and my object is to be paid for. I'll destroy all electronic records after you confirm receipt, Mallory wrote to Yang. I already destroyed the paper records. I cannot keep these around. Too dangerous. At this point, all the risk is on me.
So he says, I'm taking all the risk, but then he goes on a few bubbles later to actually try to transmit additional information to the Chinese.
But technology wasn't Mallory's strong suit. He complained to Michael Yang that the phone wasn't working properly. This system sucks. It's too cumbersome, he wrote. I put all these messages and you can't read them because you're not logged in the same time. That's a poor system. At this point, prosecutors say Mallory was scared. He'd been stopped at customs, and he feared the CIA and FBI were onto him. Prosecutors say he decided to come up with a cover story and reached out to the CIA, telling them he thought he was being recruited by Chinese spies. The CIA called him in for an interview.
My judgment is, and we haven't got through this conversation, that these guys work for Chinese intelligence, so my sense is that they were looking for government secrets, U.S. government secrets at some level.
In this meeting, Mallory admitted the phone was a covert communication device given to him by the Chinese. But prosecutors say he lied about the classified documents he'd already sent.
Did you send them anything on that phone? I sent them some tests of some sort just to see if I could do it right, and I couldn't figure it out. I messed that up.
He's trying to control the narrative. So what you have here likely is an attempt to steer the story, to explain away some of the more alerting pieces while not admitting to the criminal activity of providing the classified information to the Foreign Intelligence Service.
We now know that at this point in time, Kevin Mallory has successfully sent the classified table of contents, the classified white paper, and tried to send several other documents unsuccessfully.
Mallory offered to bring in the phone to be examined by the CIA, confident that all his messages to Michael Yang had automatically been deleted.
So he believes everything he sent has disappeared from the device. So that's why he's willing to bring the device in.
We have every reason to believe that he believed at the time that those communications would be gone.
2 weeks later, Mallory arrived at a hotel room in Ashburn, Virginia, for a second meeting with the CIA. When he got there, the FBI was waiting for him, along with a computer forensic examiner. He agreed to show them how the phone worked.
When he goes to demonstrate it, up on the screen where he expects to have his whole chat history basically deleted, up on the screen comes some of the chat history.
The FBI recorded the meeting.
I'm surprised it kept this much. So you made a comment that you're surprised that there was this much there. Right, because in the past, maybe it's a screen size, because some of it's just disappeared.
One of the most incriminating messages that appeared on the phone was Mallory planning another trip to China. "I can also come in the middle of June," he wrote. "I can bring the remainder of the documents I have at that time."
From the FBI perspective, this is a pivotal moment in the investigation.
4 weeks later, the FBI arrested Kevin Mallory and searched his home. Hidden in the back of this closet in a junk drawer, agents discovered an SD card wrapped in tin foil, on which he'd placed 8 secret and top-secret documents, the same ones he scanned at that FedEx store last April.
It is our belief that it was intention to take this SD card to China to provide to them.
Does the Mallory case fit a pattern that you're seeing coming from Chinese intelligence?
Yes. We currently have 3 pending cases against former intelligence officers, and they're alleged to have been spying on behalf of the Chinese.
It's hard to overstate how unusual it is to have 3 cases like this ongoing.
It's not unusual, it's unprecedented.
To me, it's disappointing, and it's really hurtful, I think, to everyone to know that we still have people who are willing to betray the U.S. for a few dollars.
Bill Evanina is director of the National Counterintelligence and Security Center, a division of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. He serves as the U.S. government's top counterintelligence official.
When it comes to espionage against the United States, does China pose the greatest threat or Russia?
When it comes to espionage, China poses the greatest threat, and it's not even close compared to Russia or Iran or any other country. And if you include economic espionage, industrial espionage, it's not even in the same ballgame.
When most people think of espionage, they think of somebody in a trench coat trying to steal a state's secret. What's happening now with China, it's not just about state secrets, it's about technological secrets. That's the prize that China wants.
That's correct. It's trade secrets, proprietary data, intelligence, emerging technology, nanotechnology, hybrid, anything that they can see that is the future, supercomputing, encryption. Those are the issues that they look at, and they have a prioritized schedule that they look at, and they send people forward to go collect that data.
John Demers of the Justice Department's National Security Division says since 2011, more than 90% of the economic espionage cases they've charged have involved China, which has stolen secrets about everything from genetically modified rice seeds to wind turbine technology.
This is a persistent campaign you're seeing.
Yes, very persistent, very sophisticated, very well resourced, very patient, and very broad in scope.
Demers says Chinese operatives have intensified their efforts on industries critical to Chinese President Xi Jinping's Made in China 2025 program, a 10-year plan to jump ahead of the United States in aerospace, automation, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and other cutting-edge industries.
I think some people who see this are going to think, well, this is something the U.S. must do as well.
The U.S. intelligence community doesn't take trade secrets from foreign companies for the benefit of American companies. This is not something that we do.
As for former CIA officer Kevin Mallory, he continues to deny sending any classified information to the Chinese. This past June, a jury in Virginia found him guilty of conspiracy under the Espionage Act and lying to the FBI. Mallory is currently awaiting sentencing and faces up to life in prison.
If spying is the world's second oldest profession, the government of China has given it a new modern-day twist, enlisting an army of spies not to steal military secrets, but the trade secrets and intellectual property of American companies. It's being called the Great Brain Robbery of America. The Justice Department says that the scale of China's corporate espionage is so vast, it constitutes a national security emergency, with China targeting virtually every sector of the U.S. economy and costing American companies hundreds of billions of dollars in losses and more than 2 million jobs.
They're targeting our private companies, and it's not a fair fight. A private company can't compete against the resources of the second largest economy in the world.
John Carlin is the Assistant Attorney General for National Security with responsibility for counterterrorism, cyber attacks, and increasingly economic espionage.
This is a serious threat to our national security. I mean, our economy depends on the ability to innovate. And if there's a dedicated nation state who's using its intelligence apparatus to steal day in and day out what we're trying to develop, that poses a serious threat to our country.
What is their ultimate goal, the Chinese government's ultimate goal?
They want to develop certain segments of industry, and instead of trying to out-innovate, out-research, out-develop, they're choosing to do it through theft.
All you have to do, he says, is look at the economic plans published periodically by the Chinese Politburo. They are, according to this recent report by the technology research firm Invent IP, in effect blueprints of what industries and what companies will be targeted for theft.
We see them put out the strategic plan, and then we see actions follow that plan. We see intrusion after intrusion on U.S. companies.
Do you have a number of U.S. companies that have been hit?
It's thousands of, actually, companies have been
Thousands of
hit
U.S. companies.
Of U.S. companies.
But getting CEOs from those companies to talk is nearly impossible because most of them still have business in China and don't want to be cut out of its huge market. Daniel McGann, the head of American Superconductor, is an exception. His firm spent years and millions of dollars developing advanced computer software for wind turbines that McGann says China looted, nearly putting him out of business. He's talking because he wants to fight back.
I'm personally never going to give this up. Too many lives were affected. Too many families were damaged through this. We can never give up on this.
You had to fire 600 people.
Yes.
Out of how many jobs?
At the time, we were almost 900.
So how much did you lose in share value?
Total loss is well over $1 billion.
Today, his factory floor is largely silent, a shadow of this once thriving company.
I think part of the strategy in all this was to kill us.
They set out to kill you.
To kill the company.
How can he be so sure? Well, his story begins when China passed a clean energy law in 2005, calling for the creation of mega wind farms throughout the country. The law made China the hottest wind power market in the world. So McGann partnered with a small Chinese firm called Sinovel, which was partly owned by the government. Sinovel made the skeletons of the turbines, and his company, American Superconductor, the sophisticated gadgetry and computer code to run them.
They actually built the turbine.
They make the turbine, we make the controls.
And did they make these turbines with your brains in them for the entire country of China?
Yes.
When he went into business there, China was already notorious for poaching American intellectual property. So he says he did everything he could think of to protect his technology from being stolen.
We made sure that any software, any pieces of the code were restricted and used, be able to access only by a few people within the company.
Once they got everything over there, couldn't they reverse engineer it?
We believe that's what they tried to do. And what they learned was this encrypted protocol was in the way. They didn't quite understand how it worked, and they couldn't reverse engineer it.
Everybody knows if it's on the internet, some brilliant hacker can get at it.
It wasn't accessible through the internet.
You kept it off the internet.
Yes.
It sounds like you built a little fortress around your precious codes.
We certainly tried.
Initially, business boomed in China for American superconductor, with sales skyrocketing from $50 million a year to nearly $500 million.
We were going through exponential growth. It's what every technology company wants to get to, is this high level of growth. We were there.
Then in 2011, his engineers were testing the next generation software in China on Sinovel's turbines. The software had been programmed to shut down after the test, but the blades didn't shut down. They never stopped spinning.
So we said why. Yeah. We didn't really know. So the team looked at the turbine and saw running on our hardware a version of software that had not been released yet.
That's when you realized
something's wrong. So then we had to figure out how could this have happened?
To find out, he launched an internal investigation and narrowed it down to this man, Dejan Karabasevic, an employee of American Superconductor based in Austria. He was one of the few people in the company with access to its proprietary software. He also spent a lot of time in China working with Sinovel.
And what they did is they used Cold War era spycraft to be able to turn him.
They turned him.
And make him into an agent for them.
Do you know any specifics of what they offered him?
Yeah, they offered him women, they offered him an apartment, they offered him money, they offered him a new life.
The arrangement included a $1.7 million contract that was spelled out in emails and instant messages that McGann's investigation found on Dejan's company computer. In this one, from him to a Sinovel executive, Dejan lays out the quid pro quo. All girls need money. I need girls. Sinovel needs me. Sinovel executives showered him with flattery and encouragement. You are the, quote, best man, like Superman.
And did they say, we want the source codes?
It was almost like a grocery list. Can you get us A? Can you get us B? Can you get us C?
Well, I've seen one of the messages, the text message, in which Dejan says, I will send the full code, of course.
That's the full code for operating their wind turbine.
Dejan eventually confessed to authorities in Austria and spent a year in jail. Not surprisingly, the Chinese authorities refused to investigate. So Daniel McGann files suit in civil court in China, suing Sinovel for $1.2 billion. But he suspected that China was still spying on his company and that Beijing had switched from Cold War to cutting-edge espionage. So why were you brought in?
We were brought in because the attacks now continued in cyberspace.
McGann hired Dmitry Elperovich and George Kurtz, co-founders of a computer security firm called CrowdStrike, to investigate. They zeroed in on a suspicious email purportedly sent by a board member to 13 people in the company.
It had an attachment. A few people clicked on an attachment, and that let the Chinese in. It was sort of like opening the front door.
What do you mean they were in?
Once they clicked on that email, they opened up the attachment.
Yeah.
Malicious code started executing on their machine, and it beaconed out to the Chinese and basically let them right into the company. From that point, they can hop to any machine and take any file that they wanted from that network.
By analyzing who the email was sent to, they were able to infer that the Chinese were after more than just computer codes.
They also wanted to figure out the legal strategy of the company now that they were suing Sinovel for $1.2 billion.
Whenever there's a big lawsuit, we'll see the Chinese government actually break into that company, break into the legal department, and figure out what's going on behind the scenes so that they can better deal with that lawsuit.
Now, did you know at that time who had perpetrated the hack?
We were able to determine with great confidence that this was Unit 61398, part of the Chinese military, that was responsible for this attack.
Unit 61398 is believed to be based in this nondescript building in Shanghai. It's part of the People's Liberation Army, and it's charged with spying on North American corporations.
We estimate that there are several thousand people in this unit alone, this one unit.
How active is this unit?
It's one of the most prolific groups that we've tracked coming out of the Chinese government. It's unbelievable what they've been able to steal over the last decade.
Like what? Give us a sense of the scope.
every industry, engineering documents, manufacturing processes, chip designs, telecommunications, pharmaceutical, you name it, it's been stolen.
In 2014, 5 military officers in the unit were criminally charged with economic espionage by John Carlin's National Security Division at the Justice Department.
These were officers in uniform, and their day job was to get up, go to work, log on, and steal from a range of American companies. And you would watch, as we put in an exhibit in the case, the activity would spike around 9 o'clock in the morning. They get into work, turn on their computers, and start hacking into American companies. Then it calms down a little bit from about 12 to 1, where they take a lunch break. And then it continues until the end of the day, 5 or 6 o'clock at night. And then they go home, and it decreases till the next morning.
China has always denied that it conducts or condones economic espionage. But in September, during a visit to Washington, President Xi Jinping pledged for the first time that China would not engage or knowingly support cyber theft of intellectual property for commercial gain.
It's the first time ever they've admitted that economic espionage should be off limits and that they will not conduct it. Unfortunately, what we saw is that the very next day, the day after they were in the Rose Garden shaking hands, the intrusions continued.
Wait, stop. The hacking has not stopped.
The hacking has not stopped. But one of the things that has happened is that the military units that have been responsible for these hacks have actually had their mission taken away from them. It was given to the Ministry of State Security, their version of CIA. So in effect, they said, you guys are incompetent, you got caught, we'll give it to the guys that know better.
The director of the National Counterintelligence and Security Center confirms that there's no evidence China has curtailed its economic espionage.
There's a lot of criticism out there among businessmen and some people in the government who complain that President Obama wags his finger at the Chinese, but he doesn't do anything.
Well, I think it's important that we do take action. If we don't do things like bring the indictment, then we would be, a paper tiger.
You know, it feels like a pinprick, your indictment. They're never going to be extradited. Is there talk of putting any sanctions on the way we did with Russia when they went into the Ukraine?
The bottom line, I think, has to be that we continue to increase the costs until the behavior changes. If it doesn't change, then we need to keep thinking of additional actions, whether they're trade actions or sanctions, that change the behavior.
The government of China declined our request for an interview, but sent us this comment. China has long suffered from massive cyber attacks and firmly opposes and combats all forms of cyber attacks in accordance with law. Groundless speculation, accusation, or hyping up is not helpful. In Massachusetts, Daniel McGann is rebuilding, with much of his business now shifted to India. But adding insult to injury, Sinovel is now exporting wind turbines with his stolen technology, including one purchased by the state of Massachusetts using federal stimulus funds.
So the U.S. government facilitated bringing the stolen goods into the U.S.
And they're here now?
And they're here now, and it's up and running.
Sinovel, using the stolen source codes, has sold wind turbines here in Massachusetts.
To the government of Massachusetts, funded by the federal government of the United States of America.
We're used to spy novels about the Russians, but today's reality in espionage is different. China has just as good a spy network in the United States, and tonight you are going to see a Chinese spy caught red-handed taking American military secrets from an employee of the Defense Department. If China is the Asian dragon, then it has awakened to compete with the United States all around the world for resources, markets, and strategic advantage. The Chinese are also shopping for information, ranging from U.S. nuclear weapons designs to the inside deliberations of the Obama White House. Because of the nature of espionage, you never get a look at this clandestine underworld. But recently, the FBI recorded a Chinese agent stealing America's secrets, and we're making the video public for the first time.
There's a nice Thai restaurant out there.
Okay. This is what espionage looks like. The man driving the car is Greg Bergerson. He's a civilian analyst at the Pentagon with one of the nation's highest security clearances. His companion is Tai-Shin Guo, a spy for the People's Republic of China. This is Guo in an FBI surveillance photo. He was born in Taiwan, but he's a naturalized American citizen who owns a number of businesses in Louisiana. And this is Bergerson, who worked at the Pentagon's Defense Security Cooperation Agency, which manages weapons sales to U.S. allies. Bergerson knew a secret that the Chinese desperately wanted to know. What kind of weapons was America planning to sell to Taiwan, the rebellious Chinese island that mainland China wants to reclaim? It's July 2007. They're driving outside Washington, and neither man knows that what they're about to do is being recorded by two cameras the FBI has concealed in their car.
Whoa. You sure that that's okay? Yeah. You sure?
We watched the tape with John Slattery, the FBI agent at headquarters who oversaw the case. He recently retired as a deputy assistant director.
What's happening there? Information has been passed prior, and this is reward for that, or there is expectation that passage of information is forthcoming. So that's what's happening right here. How much money is he holding in his hand? I think we're probably looking at about $2,000, thereabouts.
Tai-Shin Guo's money and contacts came to the FBI's attention while the Bureau was investigating a different Chinese espionage case. They followed him, tapped his phone, watched his email, and all of that led to Bergerson. In the car, the Pentagon employee and Chinese spy were plotting the handover of secret documents that listed future weapons sales to Taiwan and details of a Taiwanese military communication system.
I'm very reticent to let you have it because it's all classified. But I will let you see it, and you can take all the notes you want, which I think you can do today. But if it ever fell into the wrong hands, I know it's not going to, but if it ever was, then I would be fired for sure. I'd go to jail because I violated all the rules.
He just described them as classified documents. Exactly.
He knows precisely what he's doing.
Exactly.
He's almost going down your list of requirements for an indictment by a grand jury.
And we thank him for that.
When it comes to espionage against the United States, is China now the #1 threat that we face?
I would be hard-pressed to say whether it's the Chinese or it's the Russians, but they're 1-2 or 2-1.
Michelle Van Cleve was America's top counterintelligence officer. Working for the Director of National Intelligence, she was in charge of coordinating the hunt for foreign spies from 2003 to 2006.
The Chinese are the biggest problem we have with respect to the level of effort that they're devoting against us versus the level of attention we are giving to them.
What do the Chinese want from us?
Virtually every technology that is on the U.S. controlled technology list has been targeted. Sensors and optics and biological and chemical processes. These are the things, information technologies, across all of the things that we have identified as having inherent military application.
The Chinese have stolen technology used in the space shuttle and in submarine propulsion systems. In the late 1990s, a congressional commission found that China now holds the most closely guarded secrets America had.
We learned, and the Cox Commission reported, that the Chinese had acquired the design information for all U.S. thermonuclear weapons currently in our inventory.
Make sure I understand. The Chinese are in possession today of the designs of all of our nuclear weapons?
Yes.
How did they get that?
The questions of how they acquired it remain, to some extent, unknown.
How the U.S. lost its atomic secrets may be unknown, but there are fewer mysteries in the case of Tai-Shin Guo and Greg Bergerson. The FBI says that Guo wanted to expand his Louisiana businesses into China, and when he sought permission from Beijing, the Chinese asked for a few favors for their intelligence service. The $2,000 was only part of Guo's development of Bergersen. Guo wined and dined his spy, and Bergersen seemed to have an appetite for espionage. At one dinner, Guo's tab came to $710. Guo took Bergersen to Las Vegas for some shows, and the day of the ride, Guo brought a box of expensive cigars. All the while, Guo lied to Bergersen, telling him that the information was being passed to Taiwan, the U.S. ally.
Does that make any difference in the law, whether you're spying for a hostile government or a friendly one?
Of course not. Classified information is not allowed to be passed without, certain approvals to any foreign government.
But I think when you see the information, you can get out of it what you need. You can you can take all the notes you want. It's just, I cannot ever let anyone know, because that'll mess my job, man. I get fired for sure on that. Well, not even get fired, I'll go to jail.
The recruitment of Bergersen has a familiar ring to Fengji Li. Li recruited spies for China as an officer in the Ministry of State Security. The MSS is their CIA.
Give me a sense of all the different ways you would persuade someone to spy for China.
That should be a long story.
I've got time.
Okay.
In our interview, Li switched between English and Mandarin. He worked for Chinese intelligence 14 years, recruiting spies in Russia. He's now seeking political asylum in the U.S.
Let me say this. Intelligence work is different from other kind of work. When I target 100 people, even if 99 people have refused me, if there is one I persuade...
That's enough.
That's enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Li told us that he recruited spies through blackmail and sometimes greed, especially if someone wanted to do business in China. Once, he says, his agents recruited the official photographer for a European head of state that he still won't name.
Would you say the MSS spends most of its effort on the United States?
How will you win?
Definitely, without a doubt.
What would some examples be of the kind of information that MSS was interested in getting a hold of?
For example, what the President Obama thinks right now.
They want to know what President Obama thinks.
Yes.
If you make me part of the owner...
Thanks to Greg Bergersen, the Chinese were about to find out just what sort of weapons America intended to sell to Taiwan. The day of that car ride, Bergersen drove Guo and the secret documents to a restaurant outside Washington, D.C. Inside the restaurant, Guo copied the secrets by hand. Out in the parking lot, Bergersen waited with a glass of wine, one of those cigars, and the FBI in tow. As they left, Bergersen just couldn't stop talking.
But I will be very careful to keep my tracks clean and no fingerprints, just like these documents, no fingerprints. I can't afford to lose my job.
Later, Guo left the U.S. for Beijing, but while he waited for his flight, federal agents got into his bags, photocopied his handwritten notes, and put them back. Guo's notes matched the secret document on the right. But John Slattery, who oversaw the case for the FBI, told us the Bureau didn't make arrests until 6 months later.
But I mean, this is drop-dead evidence. And espionage is occurring. Why didn't you arrest them sooner than that?
Well, these investigations are tremendously complex and tremendously difficult to begin with.
The Department of Defense wants you to stop it right away.
Please, sooner than later. But the FBI says, listen, we want to make sure we can sustain a conviction here, and are there other players in this?
Turns out there were other players. Guo had another source inside the Pentagon, and Guo was connected to spies on the West Coast who were giving up U.S. space and naval technology. Presumably, the U.S. is doing the same kind of spying in China, but Michelle Van Cleve says America has so much more to lose.
I think we're a real candy store for the Chinese and for others in terms of technology and commercial products, or other proprietary information, and so we will always be the principal target for them.
What is the most serious damage that Chinese espionage has done to the United States?
It's the totality of the collection effort. take a case like this, or cases like this, traditional espionage, penetration of the interior, couple that with industrial and economic collection, couple that with cyber, it greatly concerns me. It greatly concerns me.
Well, I hope this all works out. I mean, you are helping me a lot here, but I don't want anyone to know about our relationship or anything, because she get me in a lot of trouble.
Bergerson kept saying, I could go to jail, and both men did. In 2008, prosecutors showed them this tape and they pled guilty. Bergerson got almost 5 years for communicating national defense information. Guo, a naturalized American citizen, is in a U.S. prison doing 15 years for espionage. Prison may have been the best option Bergerson had, because after he left the car, Guo pulled out his own tape recorder. We'll never know why he taped the damning conversation, but it is classic spycraft to use blackmail to get at ever deeper and deeper secrets.
For every case that is broken, like the Bergerson case, for example, how many others are there that we have no idea about?
Oh, isn't that the important question? You never know what you don't know. But certainly we have seen such an extensive range of activities by the Chinese that it should make you very uncomfortable.